There was a school that faced a unique problem. A new fad arose among the eighth grade girls. They began bringing and trading and trying on all these different kinds of lipstick. They would do it together with their friends to just test out the new styles and shades. And the gathering point for this was in the bathroom. And that was fine and all, but after they would try all these lipsticks, they would press their lips against the mirror in the bathroom and leave just dozens of these little lip prints all over the mirror every day. And every night, the custodian would have to come in and clean them off. Finally, after several days of this, the principal just decided that something had to be done. And since she was someone who believed that actions speak louder than words, rather than just verbally reprimanding the girls, she decided to bring them into the bathroom to meet the custodian. She explained that all these lip prints were creating a big problem for the custodian, who had to clean these lip prints off the mirror every night, night after night. And then, just so the girls understood, she had the custodian demonstrate for them just how much of a pain it was to have to clean up after them day after day. So he obliged. He went into his cleaning stuff. He grabbed a long-handled squeegee, dipped it in the toilet, and then very thoroughly cleaned off the mirror. And needless to say, the girls never did it again, because the principal was right. Actions do speak louder than words. Better just to show you than tell you. And I think most of us understand this, just how important our actions are and how they matter even more than words. We've got expressions for these kinds of things. Actions speak louder than words. A picture is worth 1,000 words. And I don't think it's that we mean to downplay the importance of words. Certainly, we learn in James, for example, how important our speech is and what our tongues can actually do as things that build up or destroy. I think it's just that we understand that our actions are more important. But I wonder, especially in the church, among people of faith who usually say a lot of good stuff and who believe, or at least say they believe, a lot of good stuff, do we always understand or fully grasp just how powerful our actions can be? I was reading about some research that was done in the 1930s by a Harvard psychologist who, in an experiment, showed that there can sometimes be very little relationship between what we say and what we do. Basically, we can say one thing but then do something completely different. I don't think that is going to surprise us too much, but what was surprising was a particular result that he had in his experiment. This was back in the 1930s, when there was even more prejudice against Asian folks than there is today. In his experiment, he, a white professor, along with two of his Chinese graduate students, toured the United States. They stayed in a number of motels, 60 or more motels, ate at over 100 different restaurants, and very rarely were they ever denied a bed in the motel, and not once were they ever denied service in a restaurant. But when the psychologist wrote letters to these exact same establishments, they overwhelmingly wrote back, that they would not serve Chinese customers. In his letter, he would ask, hey, would y'all serve Chinese folks? And overwhelmingly in the letters, they said no, they wouldn't do it, even though they had already done it in person, in action. Their actions were actually better than their thoughts or beliefs. It's almost like they just needed a little nudge, or they just needed to be thrown into the situation without any opportunity to make the wrong choice. Our passage today is but a small scene taken from the Passion of Christ. Blink and you almost can miss it. But it is a scene that has a lot to offer. It is the one about Simon from Cyrene, the one who carried the cross of Christ. And the soldiers led Jesus away inside the palace, that is the governor's headquarters. And they called together the whole battalion, and they clothed him in a purple cloak, and twisting together a crown of thorns, they put it on him. And they began to salute him, "Hail, King of the Jews!" And they were striking his head with a reed, and spitting on him, and kneeling down in homage to him. And when they had mocked him, they stripped him of the purple cloak, and put his own clothes on him. And they led him out to crucify him. And they compelled a passerby, Simon of Cyrene, who was coming in from the country, the father of Alexander and Rufus, to carry his cross. And they brought him to the place called Golgotha, which means place of a skull. And they compelled a passerby, Simon, to carry his cross. Compelled. Now the Greek word there is angeruo. It's translated as compelled, forced, pressed into service. One of the other times that it's used is when Jesus is preaching his Sermon from the Mount, and he says, whenever you are forced, whenever someone angeruos you to go 1 mile, then you go 2. Forced, compelled, made to do something, or one of my new favorite words, voluntold. Voluntold. Now, we don't know anything about Simon, really. We don't know if he was the kind of man who would have politely declined to carry the cross if he could do so through a letter or a phone call or text message. We don't know if he was the kind of man who would raise a fuss even at the mention of doing something, or doing something that the state was forcing or compelling him to do so. All we know is that the cross was not something that he chose, but something that was given to him. It was something placed upon his shoulders because a Roman compelled him to do it. He didn't really have much of a chance to say no, really. Maybe he would have declined if he could have. The scripture does say that he was simply a passerby. Now, maybe if given a moment to pass on along, given a moment to go home and pray about it, isn't that how we say it? He might have passed on the responsibility to someone else. Not unlike the bystander effect, that effect where there's a traffic accident and everybody thinks that somebody else is going to call 911. They make that assumption, and because everyone assumes that, nobody ends up calling. But maybe not. Maybe he gladly accepted the challenge to carry the cross. Either way, it didn't seem like he had much of a choice, really. And sometimes neither do we. Many of you remind me of Simon in this way. You are people who, even if you had the chance to say no, you probably wouldn't. You'll clean the church, you'll conduct the choir, you'll sing in the choir, you'll pick up the food, stuff the bags, help with the kids, visit the shut-ins, meet the need, whatever it is, do whatever it is, not just in the church, but in your own families when something comes up. The thing is, it's just, it's not like many of you really have the choice. Church-wise, there's only so many people who are willing, or maybe only so many people who can, and the same is likely true in many of our families. And plus, Jesus has really got a hold of some of y'all. I mean, he's called you, and in some sense, you don't really have much of a choice. Jesus isn't going to press us into service or force us to do something quite like the Roman forced Simon here. But many of you know that your life isn't your own, And whenever you have the opportunity to go to church or to fix that casserole or go and visit that person or call somebody or write a card or help out when something happens in your family, you're going to do it. You're going to do it. You've been called. You've been compelled, just as I have. Now, for me, it was into ministry. And I don't know, maybe this will sound familiar to some of you. I pretended that I didn't know what was going on. I pretended I didn't know about that opportunity. I tricked myself into thinking that plenty of others would volunteer. I thought I could say no to something that I was being voluntold for. I couldn't really say no. I mean, I could have said no, but I would have been miserable. And I know one day I'm going to get a phone call about moving to another appointment. And again, I'm not going to have much of a choice. I'm going to be called, compelled. And not just by a Roman soldier or by a district superintendent or bishop, but by God. I could, just as before, pretend that compelling voice is not actually calling me. But again, I'd be miserable. And I think y'all have experienced this too. Like you could say no, but you'd be miserable if you said no. You have experienced this, I know. Just think about all the times when one of your own church folks makes you feel like absolute crap with that one-liner that we all just love to hear so much. Well, we missed you Sunday. Missed you Sunday. Or, you know that thing that you knew that we needed help with and you didn't show up for? Yeah, we missed you. We missed you. We're called to carry one another's burdens, and we're called to carry together the mission of the church. Years ago, I was hiking on the Appalachian Trail with a friend of mine. We were up there in the area around Fontana Dam, and I'd never done anything like this before. I hadn't braved the elements, rain, chilly nights, making fires, purifying the mountain water with iodine tablets. But what I remember the most about that trip was just how grueling it was. I'd never done anything so physically demanding. Foolishly, I had overpacked. I decided to pack a bunch of canned foods because it was cheaper than those dehydrated meal packets. And my backpack weighed 80 pounds. And after the first day of hiking up and down 10 to 15 miles, I didn't think I'd be able to get up and do it all over again the next day. Blisters, entire body sore and aching. I read this little scene about Simon and wonder, how could Simon have done that? My little 80-pound backpack would have been nothing compared to a Roman cross. The cross beam alone was around 100 pounds. The whole thing would have been 300 pounds or more, and it wouldn't have come with a back brace or cushion straps. That thing would have been heavy and burdensome. But the thing is, Simon carried it. And if he ever said a word about it, it wasn't even important enough to write it down, because it was his action that was most important. He was compelled to carry it. He put one foot in front of the other, and before he knew it, he was walking with Jesus. He probably even touched the broken body of Christ on the day that he died, felt the blood drip from his body. And I doubt very seriously that he was ever able to leave that situation, go on as if nothing ever happened. His life was forever changed. And it all started with somebody pointing at him and saying, hey, you, come here and pick this thing up. It's not going to carry itself. Amen.